So I was on Facebook today and I see an article. This article is addressing the topic of mass shootings. And the headline of the article involves, a lot of mass shooters, they come from broken homes. They're young lost boys that come from broken homes or fatherless homes, right? And I click on the article and I see that the article is from what, February of 2018. Um, like closely around the time that the Parkland shooting happened. And I'm looking at this headline and in my head I'm comparing it to the headlines that I'll see about Chicago gun violence. And the differences jump out to me. It's alarming to me, right? And this article is from Fox News, so I'm really not really surprised. But at the same time, I'm like, wow. I'm noticing the difference in the coverage, and not across all media platforms, but a select. It's a nice amount of platforms that cover these violent acts differently, mass shootings compared to Chicago violence, right? And we know that the mass shootings often involve individuals who are Caucasian or non-black. Non-black. The Chicago shootings involve a lot of times black individuals. And I'm noticing a difference between the coverage, right? And I'm looking like, wow. So for the mass shootings, you're gonna have a headline. It's an old article, but you're gonna have a headline saying how a lot of these mass shooters, they come from fatherless homes, they come from broken homes, and they're young lost boys, and that's what the headline is giving off. They come from broken homes and talk about the broken homes that they come from. And this headline is created to create some form of empathy or sympathy, not empathy, some form of sympathy for the shooters, right? But when it comes to coverage about Chicago violence, that same sympathy is not afforded to those black individuals that, take another person's life. And I'm not saying the sympathy should be afforded to them if they take somebody's life. I'm not saying that you should give them sympathy. But if you're going to view one particular group of people, you're going to have them have sympathy displayed towards them and not another group of people a lot of times, that's a problem. That's a problem. My problem comes in when you see Chicago violent acts happen and the headlines is always gang member kills young boy, or gang member takes another gang member's life, or vicious street, I don't know, vicious, it's a lot of animalistic headlines, right? It's a lot of headlines that make you think, okay, this person is very, very dangerous. But when when it comes to mass shooters, a lot of not all of the headlines are like that. There are headlines like the one I'm talking about that tries to create sympathy around the mass shooter. And that is extremely, extremely disrespectful, especially to the victims, right? Even if you feel like, okay, they come from broken homes. At the same time, you got to cover both of these situations. If you're going to cover one way, you got to cover both of them the same way. And both of them should be covered as it is. They both are heinous acts on both ends. If it's in Chicago, it's heinous. If it's a mass shooting elsewhere, it's heinous on both ends. But I see that one group of people, the Chicago violence is viewed as like, oh my God, look at those despicable animals. Look at them. They're at it again. The savages. The mass shooters are looked at as like, you know what? We want to understand why he did this. Why did he come to do this? Why did he decide to wake up and do this one day? What was going on with his background? And there's no one wonders what goes on in the background of the young Chicago gang member or the Chicago thug that they like to say. They don't. No one tries to find out their background, right? And then they all say, look at the people in Chicago again. Look at those young black boys in Chicago running around like hooligans. And the mass shooters of other ethnicities, they look at us like, oh, it's a lot. It's sympathy awarded to them. Like let's see what's going on with them. Let's talk about their home life. It's not the same thing. Both of those incidents should be covered as equal, as heinous. As heinous. And if a person goes and shoots and kills, 20 people, 15 people, that's definitely heinous. Killing kids and all of that, that's definitely, absolutely heinous and despicable. Why should one be covered? Why should that be covered as a way, like in a way to create sympathy around that individual? That's not right. That's not right. I don't fool with that at all. Because I see every time something happens in Chicago, people are quick to jump. People are quick to say, look at them in Chicago. They're acting a fool again. Look at them. They don't know. Look at them. And try to act like black people are inherently more criminal than any other group of people. Right? When we see that crime happens across all ethnicities. We see that crime happens across all ethnicities. We see it from mass shootings to when you watch the news, when you watch national news, when y'all watch regular TV, Forensic Files, you see that crime happens across all ethnicities. But when it's covered in Chicago, it's looked at one way. It's looked at as absolutely despicable and heinous. And when mass shootings happen, I'm not gonna lie, there are a lot of headlines that cover it correctly. But there are also other headlines that try to create the image of sympathy around the shooter, which is completely it is completely disrespectful to the victims and unfair at all. Come on, really? I don't fool with that. And then they come from single parent homes narrative that was created around the mass shooter in Parkland. When they tried to make that narrative, that same narrative that, when it's used for the black kids involved in gang violence in Chicago, they talk about them coming from single parent homes in a disparaging way. I see the comment section. I see it. Talk about it in a disparaging way to demean the black woman, to say, oh, look, she couldn't even pick up a mate that was going to stick around for the kid. Look at her. She didn't even pick a mate who was going to be there in the kid's life to help raise the kid. Oh, he didn't even stay around to raise the kid. So it's a different tone when the single parent narrative is used for Chicago violent offenses. And the single parent narrative, when it comes to mass shooters, the tone is very different, So this is something that I've been new. This is something that, that's been evident for a very long time. I was aware of this a while ago. I was aware of this in about 8th grade. In the elementary school that I went to. I was aware of this in high school. I had teachers who, made us think on that level. Right? I had teachers that challenged us to think and to see past exactly what the media is trying to present to us. I went to school as a mass communications major. I understand how headlines work. I understand how the opening sentence in a column, the opening sentence in a news story, how it shapes the narrative for a story, basically. And it's not shaped fairly across all boards, across all levels, across all ethnicities, across all regions. And I don't fool with that at all. I saw that headline, although it's from 2018. I'm looking like, wow, that's really how you're gonna attack this angle? When the angle is shifted, when that narrative, the kid coming from a single parent home, when that narrative is used for black gang members or black thugs, people like to call them black thugs and all of that. When it comes for black individuals who partake in violence, when it comes to that, you use the single parent narrative in a disparaging way. When it comes to other ethnicities, in the majority, is used in a way that is, when it comes to the majority population, it is used in a way to seem like, hey, let's talk about this. Let's have a discussion about this. To create sympathy, and that's completely unfair. And when I said the black thugs, I was talking the way that these news outlets frame the Chicago violence. Look at this young gang member. And they could possibly be young gang members. For sure. But they're not gonna call the mass shooter a terrorist. They're not gonna call it like it is on that end. They're not gonna call it terrorism. They're not. It's a terrorist act when you commit a mass shooting. It's not gonna be talked about in the same way. That I have a problem with. I have a problem when people say, you know, they refer to one thing, refer to the mass shooting as, let's talk about why, you know, this incident happened. Why would he do this? And, you know, he was a good kid that, you know, just had a troubled past. And they go to the black kids in Chicago and say, oh, look at him, acting a fool. I have a problem when it's like that. And I have a problem when people say things like, you know, we don't like black people in Chicago only march when it's police brutality situation, when a police officer takes a black man's life. We don't get up in arms and we don't protest when another black man kills another black man. Yes, we do. Yes, we do. Don't let people that are scared to come to Chicago tell you what's happening in the city. They have no clue because they only going off what somebody else is saying and what the narrative they want to hear. They're not coming. They are too terrified. They're shaking in their boots to come to the city. They're too afraid to come into the South Side to know what's really going on here. People protest and march when it's a crime that when a black person kills another black person. People protest all day. They come in and create programs to stop these incidents from occurring all the time. All these different programs are created all the time, but let the mass media, let the national news media tell it. Oh man, that rarely happens. Is, you know, only when a police officer kills a black man are the black people enraged. No, we enraged every single time it happens. When it's another black person taking another black man's life, and when it's a police officer of another ethnicity taking a black man's life, or a police officer that's black taking another man's life. We enrage all the time. We enrage when unjust behavior, when crimes happen across the board. We're not unjust. We're enraged all the time. When something wrong happens, when an injustice occurs. So don't let them tell you what's going on in Chicago. Like, oh, they're not doing it. They're not marching when a black man takes another black man's life. They're not enraged then. Yes, we are. They don't know because they are too afraid to come here, to come find out the truth. But I just wanted to make that video and talk about, you know, the difference in headlines, the difference in how stories are framed when they involve mass shootings and mass shooters compared to Chicago violence among young black gang members. It's a difference, and it's noticeable. I'm not saying that every media outlet does that. A lot of them don't. A lot of them cover them equally. A lot of them cover the mass shooter more heinously. They cover it more heinously, but it's a lot of them that still don't cover it the same way. They use the young gang member in Chicago. They use a picture of him throwing up gang signs. They use a picture of the young mass shooter in a shirt and tie, in a school uniform. It happens. I'm just saying, you're gonna tell a story. You're gonna tell a story of a heinous act. Let all stories of all heinous acts be told in similar fashion. And the most vile ones, let them be told for what it is. Not trying to create some type of sympathy around the situation. That's all I'm saying. Cover them equally. If it's a heinous act, it's a heinous act, and there's no justification for it. Well, we'll talk about the problems to stop these things from occurring, but some people are just deranged. Some people are just terrorists. Some people are just evil people, and it is what it is. Machiavelli Mills TV, peace.